It's Black History Month, and I'm joined by one of St. Louis's most notable civil rights activists, Percy Green. Please stay with us next on City Corner.
This pattern of life in St. Louis must not continue. We refuse to allow men, husbands, and fathers to be degraded before their families and their community because they are denied the opportunity to work. There has been confirmation by the St. Louis Human Relations Council that this pattern of economic discrimination has further entrenched itself at Jefferson Bank and Trust Company since August of this year.
We're gonna get that freedom.
Have never been able to get justice in the state of Missouri, and I think that this marks an absolute low point. And this, the court decisions and the whole manner in which this case has been handled means that there has been and there continues to be a complete disparagement of law when Negroes are involved.
We as Negroes have a right to protest, and I think we will continue to protest. And I think the 15 people that are now in the custody of the sheriff, I feel very strongly, very, very greatly disturbed.
Feels good. Good to be back in the fight.
Taylor Jones, how about you?
Feels good, Chris.
Any comment, Reverend?
Not at this time, Chris.
Mr. Curtis?
We're glad to be out.
What was it like in jail? How'd you spend your time?
Reading, playing Scrabble, conversing and debating.
Growing a beard?
And growing a beard, yes.
Glad to have him back?
Oh, you know I am.
Miss Clay, would you tell us how you feel about this?
I have no comments to make.
No, you don't. How about you?
I'm happy to be out, Chris.
How are conditions in the jail?
They were very good. We weren't mistreated in jail. I think that we were in a little bit too long, but other than that, conditions were very good.
Hi, I'm Sarah Thompson, and welcome to City Corner. You've just been looking at footage from the 1960s, around 1963, when the Jefferson Bank demonstrations are going on, and we're talking about civil rights today, civil rights here in St. Louis. I'm joined, and I'm honored to be joined by Percy Green, one of the most notable civil rights activists in St. Louis. Thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me.
So there's a lot to cover, I think, just in the sense that when living today, it is 2013, and a lot of the ways, the freedoms that so many people have, including obviously African Americans, are due directly to the work of people such as you. When we put it into history, though, one of the most notable sort of moments that sort of we pay attention to in local history is the Jefferson Bank demonstration, along with many other things that you personally did. Let's start with the demonstrations, though, with Jefferson Bank, and could you put it into context for me? Like, it's 1963, why Jefferson Bank? What's so significant about that?
Well, as I recall, Jefferson Bank was considered as an all-black bank, even though it was owned by whites, and it was located there on Jefferson and Franklin. Some years later, they decided to move to Jefferson and Washington, in what is a couple of blocks from Jefferson and Franklin, about 3 blocks to be exact, in a white commercial district. And then, of course, some of the people who had been banking at Jefferson Bank noticed that when they opened, even though in the past it was all black employees with the exception of the president, and that all of a sudden it became an all-white bank.
Okay.
And so the question was raised as to what happened to all of the black workers. And then, of course, then that message was transmitted over to CORE at the time. And so CORE then made a demand on Jefferson Bank that at least they ought to be able to hire 4 black tellers after not having any blacks at all. And of course, the bank resisted, and as a result, there was a protest. As a matter of fact, the protest occurred August, right after the March on Washington, which was August the 28th of 1963. Days afterwards, the march, when the people were coming back to St. Louis who had been to the march, I mean, we asked that they come directly to Jefferson Bank to man the picket line. And that's what happened. We had a big picket line there. And then, of course, the interesting thing is that the bank went and got a court injunction after learning that we were going to picket the bank and all, and then of course many of us didn't know what a injunction was and care less at the time, because we felt that we were exercising our constitutional rights of free speech by picketing the bank. And then, of course, after doing that process, some of us said, well, why don't we go inside the bank and sing some freedom songs? And so that's what happened. And then, of course, that angered the white power structure. So because we did not adhere to their court order, they decided to round up some of the past leaders of CORE at midnight. That demonstration took place on a Friday. Well, about 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, the sheriff rounded up about 9 of the past chairpersons of CORE and jailed them. And that made big headlines. Now, that was the first 9 people. And then, of course, many of the community, especially the black community, was upset by it. And we held rallies and things of that nature to determine as to what would we do next. And it was decided that we would purposely violate the injunction this time. The first 9 did not purposely violate it. They were held accountable for what some of the rest of us did by going in the bank. And so the next 10, we organized 10 other people who would actually go on the bank's parking lot. And that was 10 folks that later were held in contempt, and then that they were arrested and then also jailed.
I want to kind of put this into context because I feel that each year we get further away from that's passed since 1963. I think sometimes for people in a younger generation, they might not understand the broader context, which was you have 1963, you know, there's Jim Crow laws, there's integration, there was a movement towards integrating. The role that this sort of plays, when we take it for granted, was jobs, really comes down to jobs, which is, at the start of the footage we were looking at, was African-American men, women want to provide for their families, but they're unable to be hired, even though they're qualified at the time, by St. Louis establishments, companies, department stores, in this case, Jefferson Bank. And so I want to sort of put that into context of, for people looking back, which is the fact that so much of our workplace is integrated is because of the work that you do, that you did. So what did this sort of, the protest, what did it do in the long term? What did it sort of prove to the businesses in St. Louis?
Well, what it did was it was more like an educational tool, an instrument, if you will. You see, the demonstrations, and then, of course, with the news media, were trying to make out as if the civil rights people were bad people. But I think many of the people, they didn't realize that most of the people, or the viewers, were intelligent enough to look through what they were saying, how they was trying to paint the demonstrators. And then the demonstration served as a two-edged sword. It educates the masses of people as to something that's going on, and it tends to draw people close to find out, well, what is all of this about? And then upon learning about the issues, jobs or whatnot, here's the place here had an agency or bank that had all blacks, and then move, and then all of a sudden they get rid of the blacks. Well, even black and white people saw something that was wrong with that. And then consequently, they began to start looking at the court orders, the harsh penalties that was levied against folks that were held in contempt. They jailed some of our best and the brightest in our community at that particular time, like Marion Oldham and Charlie Oldham and Congressman Clay, the senior. And it was an interracial bunch of people that was jailed, you know. Eugene Tenor, that I mentioned to you off the air about his involvement with me being involved in the protest movement. His wife was in jail. But the harsh penalties, you know, like almost a year sentence for many of the people, you know, just for violating the injunction. And so, but after that, I mean, the organization grew. I mean, participation and activities grew. They didn't stop. They didn't stifle the effort. And so both black and whites gravitated to the protesting and all. And I think in about 6 months after the initial protest, the Jefferson Bank did in fact hire the 4 people that we had demanded.
Okay. Well, we're gonna take a break, but when we come back, we're gonna talk to Mr. Green about some of the work he specifically did, most notably with the St. Louis Arch, chaining himself to the construction of the St. Louis Arch, as well as many other things that Action did. So please stay with us on City Corner.
Experience St. Louis.
This financial advisor is being accused of committing one of the largest investment frauds in the history of the United States.
I guess we're not going to Aspen. That's fine. You see, I like tennis balls. He likes insider trading. So he's going to jail and I'm going to a shelter. And no, they're not the same thing. Shelters are for good pets that want to be adopted. Jails are for criminals. I've done nothing. Uh-oh. Okay, I stole a cheeseburger once. How my dog?
For those dealing with the struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for advice and support.
Over 13 million people are affected by famine, war, and drought in the Horn of Africa.
Make a simple text donation of $10.
But do more than donate. Forward the facts.
Are they trying to prove? What is it that they are seeking in this particular type of demonstration?
Well, this is their method of calling attention to the fact that they want jobs. They feel that this hit and miss proposition is no good. That's the words that Mr. Green used. And that they want a lot of jobs. They feel they're entitled to a lot of jobs and they want them now.
We are not just demanding one job for one Negro. We are demanding that the whole pattern of discrimination in the construction industry be changed in order to include Negroes in all skilled jobs.
Not have any Negroes above the rank of captain in the city of St. Louis.
Do you think any of them that are captains would be qualified to be, say, an assistant chief?
Of course, yes. In fact, we have found that many of our Negro officers are better qualified than are the white officers. Now, this is not as true today as it was, let's say, 3 years ago. Persons who are qualified as of now to become, let's say, to hold the position of major would have to be at least a lieutenant. And this would go back maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago. And many of, I won't say many, but at least we know, for an example, there were 10 Negro officers holding college degrees. However, only one has been promoted to a rank higher than patrolman, to the rank of sergeant, whereas there were only 4 or 5 white officers who had degrees, and all of them have rank of at least lieutenant, save one who's a sergeant.
My personal reasons for being in the struggle for freedom is for my son. You know, this is an immediate personal thing, is that he is now old enough to get shot down in Vietnam and or to get killed in defense of this country, but he is not able to get his rights as a human being and as a citizen. And this is one of the reasons that keeps me moving forward in this struggle day in and day out, because until America comes a place where my son can live in peace and harmony and can go to the extent of his ability, then I must continue to fight.
Welcome back to City Corner. Today we're talking with Percy Green. He's one of the most notable civil rights activists in St. Louis history, and this is obviously all in honor of Black History Month. But I wanted to ask you, Percy, in the first half we talked about Jefferson Bank and sort of its significance in St. Louis history. Let's talk about action. We just saw footage of when you famously chained yourself.
No, climbed the arch.
Climbed, and were you not correct it? Were you not chained to the construction of the arch?
No. That's something in the minds of people that's been missed.
So tell me about that day. I mean, we were looking at footage.
Richard Dale and I, we climbed the arch, and that was
it.
nothing about no chaining.
Never.
I don't know how that got into the
urban
scheme
myth
of
that you were
things.
chained to the.
Right. No, it was strictly climbing of the arch, and after we come down, then of course we were arrested. You know. I
see. And so tell me, what was the motivation behind that?
Well, we were just, we knew that was a violation of sort. It was trespassing. Mm-hmm. But we thought it was significant in order to highlight the fact that here federal funds were being used on a federal project, mm-hmm. and yet blacks were not allowed, blacks were not employed, nor were there blacks had contracts. And so the only way to make that known is to disrupt the harmony of the work there, to make it known to the observers that something was wrong here at this site, and that the thing that we were most concerned about is jobs and contracts, mm-hmm. and none of that was being done. So, and of course, and the interesting. President Kennedy had just been elected not too long ago, and mm-hmm. his Attorney General, by the name Nicholas Kastenbach, dropped the charges against us. It was federal charges made against us because it was federal mm-hmm. land and federal project. But they dropped the charges and got into the scheme of things and really made the National Park Service to do a better job in monitoring the contracts and trying to make sure that minorities got some of those jobs, employees, you know, mm-hmm. as well as contracts.
Would you say that the focus of action at the time was really about jobs, was about employment?
Yes, action came into being right after the Jefferson Bank, and after the thesis of us coming into existence was more and better paying jobs for black males, mm-hmm. black men. And the thinking behind that was that we noticed that whenever a protest group began to start making demands on an agency or a company, the first thing they would do is hire a black female. So we had to, our thinking is that black men was considered, should be considered as the chief breadwinner as it was the case in the white community. So therefore we then highlighted that even though we want jobs for black females as well, mm-hmm. but the emphasis was more and better paying job for black men, mm-hmm. the chief breadwinner within the home structure. And that, of course, they, meaning the establishment, always want to play these games. They hire a black female and put her out front, and then, of course, try to make out as if there's something wrong with us protesting when they have a black female sitting out front.
When you look back on sort of the many years, I mean, what stands out in your mind was one of the biggest turning points, the most significant to you?
Well, there are many episodes that I've been involved in. It's hard for me to distinguish which is more important than the other, but I would think that the Green versus McDonald case, which was a Supreme Court's landmark case that made it possible to prove racial discrimination. See, before this case, the only way you could prove racial discrimination is if the perpetrator admit that they discriminated. Now, even though most of us was aware that, and even most whites knew that discrimination exists, but you couldn't prove it unless the person who committed the crime admitted to it, and that was very seldom, if of any time, that one would do such. So my case made it such, for lack of a better term, allowed for circumstantial evidence as a way I think most people would understand that you could prove it without the person admitting if you meet certain conditions.
Do you think, as we sort of wrap things up, when you look at today, do you think young people today, do they get it? Do you think that they know, that they recognize the significance of what you've done and others like you did?
Well, I think some do. I mean, it's never, I never think that enough, but that is part and parcel of the news media. You have so many distractions and things of that nature that is going on, and then you have a lot of confusion that is going on, and so the thing that those of us that are sensitive and conscious about these things, we have to make sure that we modernize our techniques and strategies and update them to make them effective. But I'm still a product of civil disobedience. See, I think that one way to really make folks aware of what's going on and what they need to be conscious about is to disrupt their comfort zone. And I think that by demonstration, booing, and all of the other kinds of
that's what will
techniques.
do it.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you being here. It truly is, it really is an honor, and I do mean that. Thank you, and for sharing your story and going back over history with us. And thank you at home for watching us on City Corner. And it's a significant time, significant moments, and we appreciate you hearing it out today. Please keep it here on STL TV.